sales in general, like this whole job is find a way. So whatever that way has to be. If I could say one thing to female reps that are coming in is know your value and know your worth. Don't ever be that girl that acts ditzy because you're female. It's really easy to sit back and fall on that laurel. And just don't do it, because it is going to take you nowhere ultimately, regardless of industry. Is hire on somewhere where you have a really strong mentor that's a pro female mentor.
Very excited to speak with Jen Kern today. I've known Jen for quite a long time. We met probably over a decade ago, and been fortunate enough to work with you for the past 4 years or so. And, one thing that we've talked about a lot recently are female reps in medical device. It's a very male-dominated profession, surgeons and interventional pain and interventional radiology. And then it's also male-dominated from the rep standpoint. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to sit down with you and just get your perspective on what it's like to be a female medical device rep, and just talk through, some of your successes and kind of what you've seen or what you've done that's allowed you to be successful as a female. So why don't you just start off and introduce yourself and kind of your background and
Okay.
what you do here at Optima.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me on. So my background, I came from a marketing degree out of school, but got into medical device through outpatient radiology services, did that marketing physician liaison role, had the opportunity to work with a lot of different kinds of subspecialties, which I think gave me a good idea as to how practices run, and different specialties have different needs. Then obviously you and I met through some mutual physician contacts and have been doing spine for the last 4 years. I love spine, totally not something I thought I was going to get into, but I don't think I will ever leave spine now that I'm here. And then for Optima, started as a sales rep, and now I'm the sales manager for our distributorship. So
Yes, and we're very fortunate to have you. You've set a tremendous example for everyone on our team. So let's just jump right into what it's like being a female as a medical device rep.
Yeah, it's challenging. I think, recently we've had a lot of conversation about it because we do have a pretty heavy female team here currently in our employee mix. And some of them are younger females, and I think they're experiencing some of the challenges that I've experienced for a long time. And we've had really good conversations about the things that are the sticking points, the things that are hard. For example, being taken seriously. I think especially when you're young, just in general, male or female, I think when you're a brand new rep, people are automatically going to dismiss you and not take you seriously because of your age and lack of experience. So I'm not sure that that's gender specific, but I think even for a female rep, it can be even more, because when you walk in a room, the way that you carry yourself, the words that you use, how your just presence in a room really says a lot about you, even before the doctor has to hear what you're there to speak to them about. So I think if you don't have good presence in a room, that's first and foremost for everybody. I think especially for females. In general, I think society kind of teaches women as we're growing up to be demure and to be more physically closed. Like you sit with your arms closer, you sit with your legs closer. Like you're conditioned over time to take up less space because it's less offensive. And I have found, especially like in an OR environment, I try to take up space. I'm 5'10", so I think I have the advantage of being tall. But when I did a lot of cold calling sales, I would intentionally wear really high heels because it would make me really tall, and people can't ignore someone who's 6 feet tall. And I think male reps have that, especially OR reps, because typically a lot of former athletes, like there's a lot of really tall people in med device, and bigger guys. They just have a larger stature. So when you're standing in a room, they just command space in a different way. Versus if you're a 5'5" female that's 125 pounds, like you physically take up less space in a room, and it's easier to get overlooked. So finding ways to make yourself bigger, not in a like bulky, like awkward way, but make yourself noticeable. Like, I think that's the key, right? Is not becoming a background, like making sure you're in the foreground, speaking up when it's appropriate. And I think that's something, like, honestly, you've taught me a lot, is when to interject and when to not interject, because you don't want to over assert and become annoying, male or female rep, right? Like,
Yeah.
we've all seen that. So knowing your timing, but also not being afraid if you know you're right on something and you're confident, how to really say, hey, maybe we should try this, or have you considered that? And kind of formulating questions in a way that is not giving yourself the pat on the back, but you're allowing the surgeon to just say, hey, let me think about this and take a step back for a second. And then if they choose to engage and ask a question, being prepared with the correct information. So.
Yeah. So how do you build that confidence, especially as a young female? I'll be honest, a lot of these surgeons are, 40s, 50s. That's kind of the demographic that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And like I said, the majority are male. So
Yeah.
a young female coming in is, young, early to mid 20s, which could essentially be one of these surgeons' daughters. So
yeah.
how do you get over that barrier so that the surgeon takes you seriously and looks at you as a part of the team?
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good question. I will say, not that I want to call myself old, but as I've aged, I've noticed that is less of a hurdle for me. Also, I've worked with some of these people for a lot longer, so that it just comes with time. But I think finding commonality, finding neutral conversation that is appropriate topics that you can be relatable, that aren't necessarily work topics. So if, for example, you know that they have kids, if you are a young 20-something-year-old, you're not married, you don't have kids, and your surgeon does, ask them about their kids. Let them talk to you about their kids' soccer game or whatever it is. Just because you don't have that exact experience doesn't mean that you can't still relate. I mean, we all have nieces and nephews and brothers and sisters and other family dynamics. You can find commonality. Be prepared. Look up where your surgeon did fellowship, did medical school. Like, are you all from the same state? Are you from the same area? Find ways to relate. I think that's probably the biggest thing. Sometimes those little tiny nuances can totally change a meeting conversation when you have that familiarity, because I know you and I have spoken about this a lot, but people buy from people that they like. Mm-hmm. They want to work with you. Now, do you have to be excellent at your product knowledge and your job? 100%. But if there's two people that have the same knowledge, who are they going to pick? The person that they jive with. Do you make that person feel comfortable? Do you walk in a room and make them feel important? I think so. Trying to get out of your own way and realize that the conversation may not be about you and your relatability. It's about the surgeon and what they need and what they want. And maybe they don't want to have a personal conversation, and that's totally fine too. If they are a surgeon that just wants to talk about stats and they're very clinically driven, come up with some other topics that are also clinically driven that aren't necessarily related to your product. Is there a great podcast that you're listening to? Was there a great book? Are there other resources that are going to feed into that very cerebral type of train of thought?
Yeah.
So I think finding commonalities at the end of the day.
Good energy, good,
Yeah.
Finding commonality, just developing that relationship. So what, maybe if there's something that you've done that you think really helped you out, or what's something that you maybe do consistently, or, something that's really helped you as a female rep?
I think, having good male counterparts has helped me a lot. It's taught me how to be confident when I've known the right thing, but I wasn't confident in the beginning, and watching male counterparts do the same thing and be like, I can completely do this. So I think, having allies in the field, I won't cite names or anything, but, I've had experiences where I've been treated poorly because I was a female rep and not taken seriously. And then as soon as my male counterparts were around, the room saw in a different light, which I hate that it has to be that. And I really hope that someday we live in a world where it's not that, but it just is. And so you got to find a way to navigate it, right? Sales in general, this whole job is find a way. So whatever that way has to be, I think the biggest, if I could say one thing to female reps that are coming in, is know your value and know your worth. don't ever be that girl that acts ditzy because you're female. It's really easy to sit back and fall on that laurel. And just don't do it, because it is going to take you nowhere ultimately. Like, that is the biggest takeaway. Is I think I've seen so many strong females that just crush male reps, and it is 100% possible. And they are hungry and they hustle. And I think you really just have to have that drive, but know your value.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if you're professional, dialed in as a female, like you said, like I think a dialed in female rep will likely crush a male rep, 8 days a week. So you mentioned kind of, don't be ditzy, know your value. I wonder, if you took a sample of it out of all the female reps out of there, like what percentage, play the like flirty game and like, the cuteness game and all of that versus a clinical value game.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you like?
Yeah. I think
what have you seen?
I think when I did marketing, when I was more heavier marketing and pharmacy, not to give pharma reps a bad rap, but I definitely saw a lot more of that. A lot of short skirts, a lot of flirtation, that may get your foot in the door initially, but I don't think that is going to drive the long-term respect and kind of dynamic relationship that you're going to need for a clinical OR surgeon type relationship. If you have a quick disposable product, that may work for you because it's a shorter sales cycle. But for what we do, these relationships are years long. They're not, This isn't a short sale. It's not a quick thing. So, I think the women that I see in the OR really are not that. Like, I don't think I've seen any women in an OR situation, because the reality is they don't last long, or they don't make it there. Like, they don't earn the trust of the physician to even get into the OR. So for the most part, the females that I see are pretty tough. Not mean. You don't have to be gruff. You don't have to be unpleasant. None of those things have to exist. And I think that's important to find that balance. But I think about, you made a good point the other day about, think about all the nurses that are in the OR and the circulators and all the crap that they put up with. And they don't let the doctors talk to them like that. They don't, there's a line, there's a balance of respect. But why can they do it and you not do it in a similar fashion type of thing? So I try to keep that in mind. I think, one of my favorite scrub techs to work with, actually my two favorite scrub techs to work with, are both female scrub techs. They're smart. They know their products. They're organized. They're there. They make the surgery go so smooth. Like, I walk in the room and I see them and I'm like, yes, please. And I think as I have continued to advance too in my career, learning from other female surgeons, I think take the time to ask their opinion, get their experiences. What we go through as female sales rep is a drop in the bucket compared to what a female surgeon goes through in a residency. I mean, they really go through it. And so earning their respect. And sometimes I think it's actually harder to have a female surgeon relationship as a female rep, because there can be some of that competitiveness. And so if you can find someone that you can really get along with, I really value my female physician partners that I work with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I've said this before, where at least for me, growing up, high school, college, like the kids that were at the top of the class, the majority of them were females in my experience. Like, I would always study with my, female friends, and they helped me out, so it's interesting how I think from a intellectual standpoint, like in my experience, females have always kind of been, further along. So I think, to your point, you have to, don't play the cute game. Don't play the, kind of flirty game. Yeah, that might work for some surgeons, and that's fine. That's not what we do.
Yep, 100%.
So I think it just comes down to really having a passion about what you're doing, and just a curiosity and learning and sharing that knowledge or curiosity with your surgeons.
100%. I think that's really the key. Like, you've really hit it on the head. Is this your passion? Is this what you want to be doing all day? If you are doing something you love, there's that old term, then you're never working a day in your life. And I genuinely feel that most days. Every job has stress. Every job has things that nobody likes to do. But overall, I enjoy the conversation. I enjoy the dynamic. I enjoy the fact that I get to be part of a team that's helping a patient and making a difference in their quality of life. Like, that's a pretty phenomenal thing to say that I get to do that for a living. So,
yeah. So if you, knowing all that you know now, if you could go back, to when you graduated college, and I don't know if you knew about med device then or not.
yeah, wasn't on the radar.
So for those female reps that are, or females that are coming out of college right now that maybe know about medical device, knowing what you know, going back, like what advice or where would you tell them to look? There's, large manufacturers, there's distributors like us, there's different technologies, different specialties. Like there's a whole lot to consider. What would you tell them?
I think the number one thing I would tell them, regardless of industry, is hire on somewhere where you have a really strong mentor that's a pro female mentor. I have been incredibly fortunate to work for a handful of people that have, in my opinion, really launched my career. You are very pro female. It shows in our hiring. You have strong daughters. It shows in the way that you interact with your family and your wife. And I've had some really wonderful mentors that have taken me under their wing and really developed me professionally. And so no matter what it is, I would say try to find a culture. I think that's, especially when you're fresh out of school, the product itself doesn't really matter. The culture matters.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
No, 100%. I think, for sure have a mentor. And then as a female, I think, like you said, it's even more important to have a pro female mentor. So we'll start shutting this down, but do you have any words of wisdom or things that you live by that kind of keep you going and keep you driven?
I don't know if I could summarize it in little pearls, but really know your stuff first and foremost. Don't be afraid. Don't be timid. Know your worth, and just hustle. That's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. And I think it's important, this I'll say too, I think it's important to address like a family work-life balance. I think the probably number one reason a lot of women don't go into surgical positions as physicians is the pressure of being able to raise a family versus have a very demanding career time-wise. And it's definitely doable. And I think as a rep, it's definitely doable. Myself, I'm a single parent now, and I make it happen. It is really hard some days, but it's what I love. So I find a way. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the biggest takeaway. And if you're 20-something and you're single and you don't have a family yet, you have no excuse. Like, I wish that I would have started right out of college because my learning curve would have been so much shorter. But all things are possible. And I think the thing that motivates me the most is my son. Like, I want to be successful because I have my son. Like, I think that pushes me more than if it were just me being by myself. So don't let anything stop you. Don't let, societal pressure stop you. If you want to do it and you want to achieve it, you can make a balance and you can make it work.
Yeah. You're certainly passionate about it. You drive me to be better, and having that passion, brings the hustle, and you have a tremendous amount of hustle. You just had a knee surgery and you're still out there doing your thing. So Jen, I really appreciate you sitting down and chatting with me for a little bit. Hopefully this helps out some of the female reps or reps to be out there. So Jen, really appreciate you sitting down with me today.
Thanks for having me on. This is fun.
Yeah.
That's good.